Transmitter device activated. Coordinates set for Earth 2.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Earth 2 podcast, your weekly exploration of the DC Comics multiverse and the legacy of their Golden Age characters through the Silver and the Bronze Ages of comics. I'm Peter Watson.
And I'm David Steele. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us. As usual, we're doing this in a slightly timey-wimey style. We're recording it before a couple of episodes that we have recorded have been released, but we recorded them ages ago.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't actually recorded for quite a long time at this point. Today's October the 23rd. Why am I saying July? So yeah, first time we've done this in a while. Listeners, if you're a regular viewer of our social medias, you might recall that on mention of Mount Rushmore a few months ago in one storyline, I posted a few Mount Rushmore covers on the socials, including this cover to this very issue that we're doing today. This was not originally on the schedule.
No.
But I've been sort of flicking through it and went, oh, look at that. And we'd already decided at one point to do something with Kamandi.
Yeah.
Because of Kamandi being involved in Crisis and Infinite Earths and being from a future, possibly a different future to the future of the Legion of Superheroes. And obviously that pre-Crisis, different futures situation thing is something that we will talk about because it's worth talking about. But there's a particular panel in this issue of Brave and the Bold, which we're covering today, issue 120, published on the 22nd of April 1975, 3 weeks after the first birthday of Stuart from Menswear. There's a particular panel which makes this worth doing just on its own, given how much the discussion we've had about which Earth does this issue of Brave and the Bold take place on anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And this adds to that.
Very much so.
If you paid attention to our socials, you will have seen the cover of issue 120 before. But before I get Peter to describe it for us, Peter,
Yes.
When did you first encounter Kamandi, the last boy on Earth?
That's a very good question. I think it might have been in the subsequent Brave and Bold team-up that he appeared in with Batman much later on.
159 or something like that, isn't it?
Yeah. I think that's the first time I came across him. Well, what about yourself?
I think it was the same.
Ah, excellent.
When I was very small, we used to visit a very famous shop in Paisley called Yankee Mags, which operated for a long, long time and sold American comics and magazines and stuff. And that's where I got the bedrock of my Marvel Comics collection from going into that establishment in the mid-80s when I become a dedicated front-forward facer or whatever they were called. And I remember seeing the odd issue of Kamandi on the racks or littering, but I think I had that issue of Brave and the Bold as well.
Yeah.
And like Kamandi's jumped into an alleyway and Batman's fighting someone, something like that. That's the cover, isn't it?
Sounds about right, yes.
Yeah.
Kind of rough hand, but yes.
We haven't. Shall we pause for a second, listeners, and check exactly? We probably should. Hang on. And having looked it up, it was issue 156, published September 79, which makes sense because that's when I was first exposed to a lot of the DC comics that we'll be covering. Published actually, according to Mike's, that great resource, Mike's Amazing World, published after the final issue of Kamandi, I think.
Oh,
so that's interesting.
Yes. Huh?
And I remember having that issue and just being like, well, this is weird with all these talking animals. Nah, not into it. Have you read much Kamandi since? Is it a character that you've made yourself very familiar with?
Hardly any, I'll be honest. I've
Right.
read bits and pieces. I've only got about half a dozen issues of Kamandi myself.
Right.
I do have a couple of trades, but it's a character I'm very aware of. I'm very aware of the history of. I'm very aware of the setup of, but haven't really done a deep dive into.
Yeah, I mean, as we probably mentioned in the past, inspired by my reading of OMAC earlier this year, which I loved.
Mm-hmm.
I had a few issues of Kamandi, maybe about 10 or 12, but I collected a full run of Kamandi over a very short period of time, some of which with Peter's assistance.
Indeed,
for which
yes.
I'm
Glad I
very
could help.
grateful.
Uh-huh.
And I haven't had time to read it yet, mainly because Kenny Smith keeps breaking my back and twisting my arm to read Doctor Who novels for the power of 3. So hopefully I'll get to my Kamandi read-through before too long, my long-anticipated Kamandi read-through. But it's an interesting concept. Basically, DC wanted to do Planet of the Apes.
Yeah.
Essentially, Marvel got there first.
Uh-huh.
So they said to Jack Kirby, do you want to do Planet of the Apes? Something like Planet of the Apes. And Jack went, yeah, all right. When you look at the cover, famous cover of issue 1 of Kamandi, where he's sort of paddling away from the Statue of Liberty, which is tipped over in the water, it's not a million miles away from the closing image of the first Planet of the Apes movie, is it?
Very true, yes.
Listeners, when did you first encounter Kamandi? I'm sure a few of you will be familiar with him. Please comment on the socials this week and share, and we'll mention your responses in a future episode, I'm sure.
We'll give you the details of how to do that at the end of the show.
We certainly will. So after all that massive long preamble, Peter is going to tell us about the amazing cover to Brave and the Bold issue 120.
We're in the giant period. We've passed the 100 pagers. It now says DC, Brave and Bold, Giant at the top.
Oh.
Yes. number 120, 50 cents, July. Now, obviously, as you know, it's Batman and Kamandi, the last boy on Earth, that are featuring in this story, because I've already told you. The main image of the cover, we have Mount Rushmore in the distance. It's kind of a desert, dry landscape. There are some gorillas on horseback, and they are riding across the plain. They are dragging a lassoed Batman through this desert plain.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, but fortunately, leaping into action, on horseback again, is Kamandi, who has his knife drawn, but one of the gorillas is shooting back at him. Oh
my
no!
Goodness.
And the caption says, "This Earth is mine." And also, extra, the Secret Six in Plunder the Pentagon.
Yes, look forward to our entire side mini-series where we read every issue of Secret Six. Someone should do a Secret Six podcast.
It wouldn't last very long.
No, but there's the Action Comics Weekly stuff, isn't there?
That's true. And then, of course, there's Gail Simone's Secret Six. So yes, I suppose it lasts a lot longer than I thought.
Ross, there you go. You can have that for nothing. I like the headshots at the top in the banner of Batman and Kamandi. Batman looking very considered, and Kamandi, quite frankly, looking like he can't deal.
Kamandi looks very Kirby-like, but it looks like he's got invisible girdles
Yeah.
here.
He does, actually, that's a point.
And an old man face almost.
I might have to, now that after I was showing off and saying I had a full run of Kamandi, I might have to sit down with every issue of Kamandi and try and find out which issue that image of Kamandi has been taken from. Will I have time to do that, listeners? Who can say? Maybe I'll have time. I'm very busy with lots of things just now. We'll see. Anyway, we shall finally start the story, and it starts full tilt. There's no messing about. The caption that starts page 1 reads,
Planet Earth, A.D. After disaster. Animals rule, men obey. And now a human boy runs for life and liberty over the black hills of what was once the state of South Dakota, of a long-dead country called the United States of America.
And we get the logos for Batman and Kamandi, the last boy on Earth, and we see Kamandi running through this desert state, trademark jean shorts and his boots, and we can see in the background he's being chased by a familiar caped figure on horseback, who's being followed by some other figures on horseback. And as he runs towards us, Kamandi is thinking, a guerrilla slave squad. If they catch me, it's the Great Lakes galleys chained to an oar forever. Then he looks back and notices that one of them doesn't look like a gorilla at all, and he thinks, what? Their leader? He's no gorilla, but some kind of bat? And the lead gorilla, and we'll describe the gorillas properly when we see them properly in a minute, he yells, Ho! Captain Bat will run down that yellow-haired animal. Follow him! And one of the other gorillas yells,
Follow Captain Bat!
And the captioning resumes,
Astounding! Trailblazing! Sensational! None of these describes this latest brave and bold saga wherein the heroes of two different worlds, Batman and Kamandi, pass across the gulf of time itself, the torch of the future, and let loose the defiant cry, This Earth is mine!
We're told that
Story, Bob Haney.
There's a little signature box which tells us this comic has been drawn by
Jim Aparo.
That's a fascinating intro caption. We'll have to come back to that. None of these describes. So what does describe? Because they would all be quite a good thing to describe it, if you ask me.
Infuriating, annoying, inconsequential,
contrary, stinky. Anyway, page 2 has another little caption sort of heading. It says part 1, and then it reads,
No chains for me.
And another caption.
Scrambling like fury, Kamandi manages to outdistance the hunters in the rough terrain, except for one.
Yes, we see Kamandi dropping down between some rocks. You can see it's obviously Batman on horseback behind him. Batman in Kamandi's situation in the future after the great disaster? What could be going on? Kamandi is thinking, he rides better than those clumsy apes, but if he's really a bat, why doesn't he fly after me?
Lungs burning, legs starting to wobble, Kamandi clambers upwards over boulders heated to scalding by the pitiless sun.
With Batman in pursuit, Kamandi climbing over the rocks is thinking, now he's afoot. Good. That makes the race more equal. Funny. Somehow he's familiar to me. You can see that Batman's carrying a little noose in his left hand there.
Over Holocaust-tossed timbers, the last boy on Earth tries to evade his tenacious pursuer.
Yep, Bats is closing. Kamandi looks back thinking, he's gaining on me.
Then, as Kamandi suddenly faces a sheer dead-end rock wall...
Yep, great perspective from Mr. Aparo here, looking down as Kamandi looks up towards us and Batman's shadow falling behind him. Kamandi thinks, I'm trapped like an animal, which I'm not. He and those gorillas are the animals. And he turns, facing the Caped Crusader. We can see Batman with the lariat in his hand, preparing to loop. And Kamandi yells at him, I'm a human being, heir to a great past. You can't enslave me, you bat creature.
As the bizarre hunter nears the young descendant of the men who once dominated the continent, the world.
Great shot, framed through the loop of Batman's lasso. Kamandi is thinking, that book grandfather had, showing how men fought in his day. Judo, it was called. It seemed a clever way to defeat a stronger foe, and he sure looks strong. The drawings, one went like this, and with that, Kamandi hurls himself forward, grabbing Batman by the shoulder and flipping him over. With a cran sound effect, Batman, who's now tangled up in his own rope, kicks back at Kamandi, who recoils, thinking, he knows the same way of fighting. Gets to his feet. Maybe he didn't see. Knee up to your opponent's jaw. As Kamandi tries to kick Batman, Batman grabs him by the leg, by the thigh it looks like, and flips him up into the air. He did! See Batman throwing his lasso up to loop it over a very handy, sharp-edged rock as Kamandi observes and thinks, he's not tying me up for the slave march. He's tossing that rope up over a rock pinnacle. And Batman, strangely quiet, is gesturing with his thumb. And Kamandi sees what Batman does and thinks, he's motioning me to climb the rope. To escape? Why? Why?
His instinct for preservation, honed razor sharp by this terrible new land he must survive in, Kamandi doesn't hesitate for long.
As Batman seems to be waving him off, Kamandi scales the cliff edge using the rope, thinking, I'm out of that trap. Captain Bat, he's waving farewell and good luck to me.
But for now, his brain must ignore these questions, as Kamandi must flee again.
Yes, in silhouette we see Kamandi clambering over the rocks, thinking, peculiar animal, letting me go like that, but I've got to keep going until dark covers the land. Oh, what's that just below? And we see a horse. But it's not a gorilla mount. Humans are forbidden to own or ride horses in pain of execution. But being chained to a gallior is worse than death. And as the horse neighs, Peter distracts me, and Kamandi jumps onto the horse's back. A big, strong-looking brown beast with wide eyes.
As he lands on the back of the Mustang, last descendant of the wild horses once abundant in the Old West.
Yep, the horse tries to buck him off, obviously, but Kamandi grabs hold of his mane, keeps a firm grip as he thinks, maybe you'd rather have a gorilla on you. Stop!
Exerting all his muscle and will, Kamandi clings to the rearing, bucking pinto. Then
the horse starts to run off. Kamandi, clinging on, thinks, you and I are survivors, horse. We must stick together. I really hope this horse doesn't end up in a swamp or being killed or something, because then I'll start crying and Peter will be embarrassed. Caption at the top of page 5 reads,
shortly after mastering the Mustang, Kamandi gallops down onto the dusty plain.
Yes, and we see that Batman, back on horseback with the gorillas, are catching him up. Kamandi looks back, sees them, thinks, the slave squad, and leading them again, Captain Bat? Then he says out loud, come on, horse, we've got to put ground between us and them. And he thinks, but why did Captain Bat let me go? And now chase me again? He must be toying with me, because to him I'm just an animal. That's it. And then there's a big, huge, massive, slow dissolve.
Then, as the pursuit eats up the miles, rising ahead like some fantasy frozen in stone, a sight that makes Kamandi gasp.
Beautiful work from Mr. Aparo. You can bet your backside that we'll see this one in the socials. Looming into view, it's Mount Rushmore. Peter's going to impress me now when he tells me the names of the 4 presidents that are on Mount Rushmore.
It's George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Theodore Roosevelt, and Abraham Lincoln.
Interesting. No sign of you-know-who. That's good, isn't it? Kamandi gallops towards this magnificent sight and he's thinking, great carved heads of humans? Can't quite believe it.
Drawn as if by some strange kinship, the hunted boy rides toward the mountain and its gigantic faces.
He seems to be sort of rounding a corner, but he pulls the horse up because he sees bears on patrol. I better hide.
Kamandi quickly guides his steed behind a boulder.
And we see that there are 2 groups of bears on horseback. The bears are wearing green military-style tunics, and this is obviously an aspect of the Kamandi series that a virus was released which robbed some humans of their intelligence, but at the same time accelerated, and is it
anthropomorphized?
Yeah, that's the word. Animals, so that, if you read Kamandi, you'll know this because there's a regular character of Dr. Canis and all that sort of stuff. The animals can walk and talk, basically, and take on human-style characteristics. So this is what we're seeing here. What we see as Kamandi then hides behind the rock is one group of bears in their green tunics on horseback, riding him from one end, and some others coming in from the other side. And the first of these bears yells to his also arriving colleague,
Ho, Rangers!
"Ho, fellow guardians of the great animal gods!
We've had a quiet patrol. Now we must leave food for the gods where the death belt begins.
Aye, we ride together to our sacred duty." We can see that the first bear is holding a sack, which obviously has some provisions inside it.
As the two patrols link up and move toward the great stone faces, Kamandi follows unseen.
Yep, still on horseback, and he's thinking, those huge human faces are looked upon as animals by those bear rangers, but worthy of their worship. I'll mingle my tracks with theirs to fool that pursuing slave squad. It's a great idea, Kamandi.
Nearer, ever nearer to the looming colossal heads, the rangers move.
We can see that one of the bears, they've got nice green caps on. One of them has a basket full of, you can see like tin food and what looks like some vegetables.
Is it a picnic basket?
It could be a picnic basket. We can see a sign that obviously reads Mount Rushmore. And there's a broken sort of telescope viewing style device. And this first bear with his basket was setting it down and he's saying,
We leave the offering to the gods' greater glory.
Behind him, his colleague sort of casts his ear to the air and says, Listen, the gods sound their sacred music. And over a fascinating, much more detailed shot of Mount Rushmore, very low angle, we hear someone singing,
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light?
Is it Enrico Palazzo?
TK. Who's that then?
That was Naked Gun.
Is it?
Yes.
Of course.
Yes.
Right. Sorry. It's not even that long since I've seen it. I saw it at the cinema. Like, was it this year? Anyway.
Gasp.
Right. I know.
Surely you can't be serious.
Don't call me Shirley. Anyway,
Suddenly,
Batman, on horseback with the gorillas he's been riding with, arrive where the bears are. Batman saying,
Hail, we hunt a fugitive animal, a young wild one who gave us a slip.
The bear replies,
We've seen no sign of him, but then you and your gorilla soldiers can't ride and hunt like us bear rangers.
This prompts one of the gorillas to say, What? Why, with Captain Badlinias, we're twice as good as you pride-plodded bears. What's that? And we see that Kamandi's horse had been startled by a snake, a rattlesnake, which is coiled up and rattled its tail, neighing, and throwing Kamandi off its back. The horse legs it. Kamandi himself starts to run off on foot. Batman spots him and yells,
There he goes! After him!
One of the bears says,
He's heading toward the death belt. We can't follow. We'll be killed. Now as Kamandi dashes through a belt of weirdly glowing energy...
It's a sort of band of pink and yellow and white radiation, and if we look back, there is a hint of it. It's not too clear because it's obscured by other panels. A hint of it on page 7. It's almost like it's on the ground in front of Mount Rushmore. Kamandi's rushing through it, thinking, I can't hesitate. What's behind me is worse.
And moments later, as the bold boy's pursuer reaches the same barrier...
You see Batman on horseback throwing another lasso, which seems to secure itself around George Washington's chin. George Washington's chin, of course, being a venue in the south of London where I saw the Montrose Avenue play in 1999.
Then, with almost superhuman agility...
Batman pulls the rope tight and swings so that he seems to fly over the belt of weird glowing energy.
Again, Kamandi knows the fear of being relentlessly pursued by the same grim figure. Higher, ever higher, he scampers, until...
As Kamandi clambers over a rock, looking back, he can see Batman. He's suddenly grasped around the waist by a pair of human hands. And he exclaims, What?
A pair of strange human hands calling Kamandi into the mountain's heart? And a creature who looks like the Batman not far behind? Part 1 halts here. Part 2 is just ahead. Race to it.
And indeed, in the very next page, we get part 2.
Whom the gods would destroy.
Did Roy Thomas write this? Captioning continues.
Kamandi struggles, but his furious appetite for battle is suddenly gone as he sees the faces around him. Human faces.
Yes, a lot of humans of varying ages and very tattered clothes. There's one man with long dark hair, a long beard, he's wearing a red tunic. We can see a blonde woman and a child in the background. In the foreground, there's an older man, long white hair, long white beard, tattered purple tunic. He has a staff to obviously help him walk. Kamandi takes all this in, pointing at them. He's surprised. He says, You're not animals? And the elderly man says,
No, boy. Like yourself, we are human, but we live like animals, trapped here since the Holocaust in this dank cave.
The old man sits down, makes himself comfortable, continues.
I am Manton, the elder and the leader, but you're not the one we sent for. The magic did not work. It only brought us a lad like you.
And the next panel, this is pretty much why we decided to do it.
Yes.
The next panel, Manton holds up a copy of issue 118 of The Brave and the Bold, which obviously we covered a couple of months ago. That's the one that starred Batman with Wildcat and the Joker. As he holds up this pristine condition, must have had it slabbed at some point, I reckon. Manton holds this comic up to Kamandi and he says,
This one, this champion of pre-Holocaust days is the one we need, the one we sent for.
did he mean Wildcat? That would have been cool. A Wildcat
Like
and
the
Kamandi
Joker.
team up would have been... Yeah. Imagine a Wildcat and Kamandi team up.
Wow.
Dear Jeff Lemire,
Mm.
Kamandi looks at the copy of Brave and the Bold 118 and exclaims, Him? My pursuer? But of course. No wonder he was familiar to me. I, too, saw him in old books. Among my grandfather's souvenirs.
Without this Batman to lead us, we could never break through the Ranger patrols who regard these old carved faces of the presidents as gods, to be guarded to the death.
Leaning into view is a younger boy, curly dark hair, wearing animal skins, and he pipes up with,
I can lead us, Manton. I'm the strongest, the quickest, the bravest.
to which Manton, looking so much like my late friend Mr. Peter Root here, or even actually quite like the Wizard Shazam, in many ways, Manton replies,
No, Garth, you're just a boastful boy. The Rangers do not know we are here, that our ancestors took refuge from the Holocaust in this old cave. And for generations now they have surrounded the mountain offering food to the gods, to which we steal out and take at night. Stupid animals, they think the gods eat it each time. Luckily, their superstition and the belt of strange energy emanating from the mountain keep them from ever climbing this far up and finding us. Yet you pass through the death belt.
Perhaps I'm immune to its power. Descendants of survivors are like that.
Aye, as we all are here. That old music-making machine, it runs in the same power. We play songs in it regularly to awe the Bear Rangers.
And we see in the foreground what looks like a cassette recorder, basically, isn't it?
Yes.
Very interesting. So what the music we heard then must have been played on the cassette. That's fascinating. Manton continues.
But without this Batman to lead us out into the world of sun and space, we will rot here. Our numbers grow smaller until...
No, you won't.
A new arrival in the cave. Kamandi and Manton swirl to see a familiar figure as Kamandi says, Captain Bat, stay back!
It is him! The magic worked after all!
Relax, Kamandi. I'm not your enemy, and I'm not an animal.
That Batman raises his gloved hands, starts pulled back at his cowl as Kamandi looks horrified and yells, You're removing your muzzle fur? You are human! Incredible! And we see revealed in the final panel, page 10, none other than Bruce Wayne. Kamandi says, Then why did you leave that slave squad in hunting me?
While I eavesdropped on you and old Manton after following you into the cave, I began to have an idea.
And the next few panels are narrated in flashback style by Bruce Wayne as he continues.
I was back in Gotham City, USA, in what you call pre-Holocaust days, the year 1975, when all of a sudden I collapsed.
And we see Batman in the company of Commissioner Gordon, Batman keeling over, Commissioner Gordon looking behind him, seeing him falling and yelling, Batman!
I was aware of the ambulance taking me to the hospital, aware that, fantastically, my body was splitting in two, one body remaining in the vehicle, another travelling into time.
And what we see is the back of the ambulance, Commissioner Gordon looking unconcerned, Commissioner Gordon looking like Stan Lee, asleep in a chair, quite frankly, as a medic tries to work on Batman. Obviously, they don't take his mask off or anything. And a weird astral body type, translucent Batman rising up and drifting out the top of the ambulance.
Soon one body was lying in a hospital bed.
And we see Bats stretched out under a sheet, still with his mask and his cape on. Commissioner Gordon watching as a balding doctor stands over him saying, Strange, Commissioner. He's in some kind of coma, yet we can't find any cause for it.
While the other body, this one you see before you, was suddenly on a desolate plain, not far from here.
We see Batman standing indeed on a wide green desolate plain with, well, what looks like a relic of his own time in front of him as he thinks,
Where am I? That jetliner with a skeletal crew looks like it crashed decades ago.
Yeah, Batman obviously gets a better look at the cabin than we get. His narration continues.
I found other time-dusted relics, the ruins of a ranch, autos with their long-dead drivers, as if some great disaster had happened long before.
Yes, and as Batman examines a motor vehicle, which is all rusting and rotting, but has a skeleton in the driver's seat, he suddenly has company, as coming over the rocky outcrop behind him is a patrol of horse riding. Gorillas, proper look at the gorillas here. We can see they're wearing red uniforms with sort of gold piping. The gorillas in the cover are basically wearing these uniforms, but they've been coloured in green, confusingly. And the lead gorilla, spotting Bats, exclaims, "You there, Bats! This is slave hunting country. Even though you're not an animal, you need a pass." We're continuing the third page following. We pass a full page advertisement for dog tags and learn at home, finishing high school type places. And as we arrive at the top of page 12, Batman's narration resumes.
It suddenly dawned on me. I'd come into some incredible future world where animals prowled and hunted its few human survivors.
Yes, we see the lead gorilla reaching forward to try and grab at Batman, and he's saying, "What? You have no pass? I, Gorgo, Slave Squad Sergeant, think there is something not right here." Batman recoils as Gorgo reaches for his mask, thinking,
If he finds I'm a human, I might be killed or enslaved.
and then he says in the next panel,
You dare to put a hand on Captain Bat?
as we see him grabbing at Gorgo's wrist, twisting his arm round, Gorgo exclaims, "Captain Bat, where is your insignia? I will swat you." Ooh! As Batman strikes him again, looks like a punch to the stomach. Batman is thinking,
If one of his simian haymakers lands, I'm a goner. Gotta go all out and use a karate blow that would kill a human being.
yeah, and with a massive kawam, Bats strikes Gorgo in the back of the head.
Gorgo was only stunned, but his gorilla buddies were impressed.
Yes, one of the other gorillas, looking very smug and happy on the back of his horse, exclaims,
He has felled Gorgo. He is some powerful mutant.
to which Batman says,
I am your new leader. You will follow
and
me.
this prompts one of the other gorillas to exclaim.
Hail, Captain Bat!
Flashback over, we're back with Batman and Kamandi and Manton as Bruce Wayne pulls his Batman mask back into position, saying,
So I joined the slave squad to protect myself, and led them in hunting you, Kamandi. The better to let you escape.
"Now I understand, except how you managed to come here from the old time." This prompts Manton to say,
I can explain that. In the cave were certain ancient Indian magic powders.
you see that he's holding a little red pouch.
Using them and the image of Batman from the book, we sent for him across time to come and lead us to freedom.
He continues whilst pointing at some weird cave drawings, saying,
But perhaps not being an Indian, I misdirected the magic and you arrived miles away instead of here.
Batman, looking at the cave drawings, remarks,
Amazing. But I am here now, inside Mount Rushmore of all places, with its carvings of America's greatest presidents. Yet I'm also still back in 1975 in that hospital bed.
But we're all trapped by that cordon of beasts surrounding the peak. Members of our band tried to slip through in years past. None ever made it. Luckily, those bloodthirsty animals don't dare come up here to find us because of the death belt.
Manto gestures towards the death belt. We can see what looks like the remains of some animal skeletons sort of under this rippling band of pink and white and yellow energy as he continues.
They're highly sensitive to its effects.
That belt's pure radioactivity, probably released when nearby atomic missile silos disintegrated during the Holocaust. Good thing I swung up and over it.
It is a good thing, Bats. Everyone seems to be moving out of the cave, as Manton says.
Which means we can all pass back along it, if you will only lead us.
Break through that tough bunch out there with a few men, some women and kids. It's wild.
Kamandi speaks at this point. "If you were such a great champion back in the old time, prove it now. Give these poor people a chance for freedom. I, Kamandi, will help you."
Okay, you dared me.
Bats is moving on towards the nice green tape recorder, which we saw earlier on. Seems to be pulling something out of his utility belt as he walks, and as he does so he says,
We've got to give ourselves a break. Thin out that guard cordon. That old tape player has wires going to speakers in the faces. Maybe my utility belt mic can do the rest.
There's a slow dissolve. Night falls, and
Not long after.
yes, we're down on the ground, looking up in the direction of what I think is the George Washington aspect of the statue. We can see the rippling, deadly belt of pink and yellow energy, and booming from the mouth of the Washington statue we hear,
Rangers, hear me. I, the chief god, speak.
And down on the peak slopes.
yeah, we see the groups of bears and the gorillas. The bears are down on their knees, supplanting themselves totally. The gorillas look a little bit more sceptical. We hear the voice from Washington continuing.
I will now command you, and you shall obey.
One of the bears says,
The god speaks. Bow down, this has never happened.
and the chief gorilla, he exclaims,
Gorilla soldiers bow to no one. Gorgo does not like this.
No presidential address ever meant more as Batman and Kamandi gamble all on humanity's future in Part 3. Next.
Yep, straight to the top of page 15, the caption Part 3.
Die on your feet or live on your knees.
Is that a quote from something?
I don't know, but I couldn't live on my knees. Not these days.
No, I wouldn't be able to either because my thighs would cramp up immediately. Welcome to your 50s.
Yay!
Anyway, there is a caption, as you'd expect, and the caption reads,
It is dawn, and with a great groaning and creaking, something moves across the plain toward the giant faces.
We are being spoiled by Mr. Apparel. The artwork in this story is astonishing, because basically what we see, an ancient, rusting aeroplane, I'm not sure if it's the same one that Batman saw when he arrived, but it's probably more likely, has been roped up and is being dragged along by, I'm guessing, just an army of animals. We can see a few on horseback pulling, but it also looks there's quite a lot of ground soldiers, maybe presumably bears and gorillas, pulling this massive dead artifact of an earlier age. As Pete said, there's some massive large creak sound effects. As Gorgo and the chief bear look down on this, and Gorgo is saying, "This is madness, to drag this bird relic through miles of choking dust all night long." And the head bear says,
The chief god demanded it. As an offering, we must obey. Every ranger guardian answered the call, and while you are in our sacred sector, you gorillas will also obey.
"That talking yellow-haired animal, he must have died in the death belt, like that upstart Captain Bat. But we slavers will wait around and make sure." We then cut to beside the George Washington face on the hillside, Batman and Kamandi poking around a corner. I should have saved all the Mount Rushmore covers for this, listeners, shouldn't I? I have to scroll back on the Instagram and see what it was. Was it during the Prez Week? Was it during Prez Week that I did it?
I can't remember.
It's probably more likely. I'll check before the end of the year review episode and we can mention it then. But anyway, Bats and Kamandi are poking round, and Bats is saying,
They swallowed the bait, Kamandi. Every ranger and gorilla's busy with the plane, leaving most of them out and unguarded. Take the cave people out to freedom. I'll catch up later.
And while the Cape Crusader keeps lonely vigil from above,
we see Kamandi's made his way to the cave people and is leading them to safety, saying, "We're out. Now keep together and keep moving." And one particularly hirsute chap in the team stretches his arms wide and yells, "The air! The sweet air of freedom!" One of his mates says,
Thank the stars!
Then Manton says,
We're not free until we reach that place Batman told us about. Where's young Garth?
And dark-haired, dark-robed, hairy guy points down below them and says, "There he is. He's gone off the wrong way, down by the ranger station. The young fool." And we see Garth leaping around, merrily yelling,
Free! Free!
Just in front of him, worth pointing out the detail, there's another sign that reads Mount Rushmore.
and very nearby,
Gorgo on horseback. He's thinking to himself, "Let those arrogant bears pull that bird relic. My gorilla nose smells something rotten about all this." And then comes over a little outcrop and sees young Garth sitting, crouching below the basket of the latest food offering. Again, we see some of the remaining equipment from our time. Gorgo loosens a rope. We can see him with the loop, loosens his lasso, and he watches Garth and he's thinking, "A young animal. A perfect slave specimen. He could only have come from up the mountain. There must be more of them around."
and moments later, down on the plain,
Yes, down on the plain, beside the plane, we see the army of bear rangers and one of the gorillas, and there's a bright flash in the sky, and it prompts one of the gorillas to point at it and say,
a flare! Gorgo's found something back at the peak, come on! And as the gorilla soldiers thunder off,
yes, leaving a big cloud of dust, the lead bear rears up on his horse and says to his team,
"Can't let these stupid apes take over our sacred duty! Rangers, follow me!" Meanwhile, the brave new world has suddenly become a terrifying, lonely place for one young human.
Yes, we see that Garth is now being pursued by Gorgo. He's trying to leg it, and Gorgo is chasing after him on horseback with his lasso twirling in the air. Gorgo thinks, "He runs like a rabbit, but he won't escape Gorgo's loop."
But as Garth doubles back toward the mountain's far side,
Gorgo, following his trail, we can see there's lots of footprints in the sand in front of him. Gorgo thinks, "He's hard to catch up to. What's this? Tracks of other animals? That means more slaves, and maybe that defiant yellow-haired cub's amongst them."
However, sharp eyes have spotted the chase.
Above, Batman is swinging around in his line thinking,
That scared cave kid's leading Gorgo and his pals to the trail of Kamandi and the others. Got to try and help them.
We're continued on the third page following. We pass advertisements. Oh, some new DC tabloids to look at. There's a reprint of Flash Comics #1 and a big Batman all-villain issue, and there's another full-page advert, which is adverts for stuff like the Bible tabloid and the Shazam tabloids, and the reprints of Detective Comics 27 and Action 1 and Sensation 1 and All-Star 3 and Wiz Comics. And there's Christmas with the Superheroes. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
A caption at the top of page 18.
Downslope like the wind moves the masked manhunter, and soon...
Yep, Batman is standing on a rock above the assembled ranks of Gorgos, gorillas and the Ranger Bears, and Batman yells down saying,
Halt! Captain Bat is taking command again.
to which Gorgo yells, "What? Don't listen to him, soldiers!" One of the other gorillas says,
But Gorgo, he outranks you.
"I suspected something rotten. His voice, it's the same as that of the chief stone god."
Gorgo's right. It is the same.
"Then the god did not truly speak. He tricked us."
Snare him.
We see Batman coiled like a spring as all of a sudden the gorillas all try and lasso him, and, well,
Batman leaps like a lizard from rock to rock, but...
with a snake sound effect, Batman is trapped by the ropes. Interesting, we reach the cover, essentially. I'm impressed. This is not a Defenders 39 situation.
Mm-hmm.
Gorgo yells, "Good! Now we ride to catch up to those other fugitives."
Forward!
And with that, the gorillas and bears ride off on their horses, with a third Batman hits the ground as they start to drag him after them. He's getting pulled along in the first panel of page 19 as he grits his teeth and thinks,
Looks like my luck in this future world's run out. But maybe I delayed these beast goons long enough for Kamandi and the others to get away.
At this moment, further ahead...
Manton and Kamandi have turned a corner to see,
It's Garth!
wails Manton. Garth replies,
The soldiers aren't far behind, and they've captured the Batman.
this prompts Kamandi to say, "He helped us, at peril to himself. I don't know much good I can do alone on foot, but I must go back and help him. Keep moving, Manton. The steel ribbons are just ahead."
Aye, Kamandi. Good luck.
As Kamandi races back along the track...
We see that indeed the steel ribbons are railway tracks. With a yow, Kamandi trips. Or does he? We see a familiar steed revealed. Kamandi points up at the brown horse he met earlier and says, "You! It was you who nudged me, horse. I have need of you, four-legged friend. Great need."
While close by...
Yes, we're back with Bats being dragged along by Gorgo and his pals. We can see Batman suffering in great pain as he's pulled along at great speed as Gorgo yells, "Tracks are fresher. I can smell the terror of those fugitives."
Suddenly...
Kamandi, on the back of his friendly horse, rides into view, tried to catch up to Batman and the animals are dragging him along. Gorgo observes, "It's him, the defiant animal. Use your guns and crossbows. He'd never be broken to slavery anyway."
And as a fusillade of fire swarms about the galloping youth...
Kamandi reaches down with a knife and manages to cut the ropes that are securing Batman. And he thinks, "This old Indian stone knife from the cave is a lifesaver now. Come on, Batman. Our friends are waiting." With that, he pulls the Cape Crusader up onto his horse behind him. Back with the gorillas and the Ranger Bears as Gorgo yells, "An extra week's pay to the soldier who stops them." And the lead bear yells,
Double that for any ranger who brings him down first.
Meanwhile, where rusty rails cut across a plateau...
yes, we see Manton and Garth and the others making their way along the railway tracks. We can see an old railway carriage ahead of them, as Manton says,
The steel ribbons. We followed them to the train relic as Batman said. Quickly, everyone, get aboard.
and they've climbed inside.
No sign of Batman or Kamandi. Garth, let loose the brake. We will have to leave without them.
Garth struggles with a large wheel as he says,
It's all my fault, Manton. If only I hadn't gone off alone.
Now, as the ancient caboose starts to roll down the long grade...
Yes, we see that now that Garth's removed the brake, the train carriage is starting moving down the tracks. As it speeds off, we see speeding up behind them is Kamandi and Batman on horseback.
It's them!
Faster, ever faster, the remnant of a long-ago freight train careens down the steepening grade.
As it does so, Kamandi and Batman are able to pull up alongside with their horse, jump from it, grabbing onto the railings at the back of the carriage. Bullets ricocheting and striking all around them, hopefully not hitting the horse, as they manage to climb on board.
As the old car hurtles away down toward a distant valley...
We're back with the bears and the gorillas as the lead bear yells,
Our horses are too weary to continue the pursuit. They've escaped.
"Oh,
Hours and many miles later, where the derelict caboose has finally come to rest.
Yes, we see the rail carriage parked up, Batman standing with Manton and some of the others all range about in front. We can also see the remnants of a railway bridge that's pitched and collapsed into a river. That's unfortunate. Manton is saying,
We will build log rafts and float down river to find a new life.
Batman says,
This is a harsh world. You will have to fight for your freedom and survival every moment.
I know, but anything is better than living like animals in that cave.
the last boy on Earth will be second last because Garth is there. Kamandi's standing with Garth close by, and Bats addresses him now, saying,
How about you, Kamandi? Why not come back with me to my time and live a normal life?
No, Batman. For better or worse, this is my world, and I must stay in battle to make it fit for humankind once again.
Looks like you've found the leader you sought, Manton.
Aye, and Kamandi's words are well chosen, since there is only enough magic powder to send one person back to the pre-disaster time. But we thank you, Batman, with all our hearts for your help.
And that Manton holds forth again a little red pouch, which has the magic powder inside.
Again, the powder works its mysterious sorcery as...
Batman and Kamandi shake hands, as Batman says,
Goodbye, Kamandi. Best of luck.
Farewell, Batman.
And within instants...
Suddenly we're back in that hospital in Gotham. Batman sitting up in a hospital bed, prompting Commissioner Gordon to say, Batman, you're conscious. Thank heavens. You've been in a coma for days.
Coma? More like a long trip, Commissioner. A voyage of discovery.
In the final panel of the story, Batman crosses to the window of the hospital, looks out on the urban landscape in front of him, thriving and yet to be totaled by the great disaster, and he thinks,
Yes. Goodbye and good luck to you, Kamandi, there in your harsh and terror-filled world. If only we could learn to make this world here and now a better one, so your future life could be bright and happy.
And a closing caption reads,
A worthy wish, Batman, but mankind's fate is to struggle, and that's why heroes like yourself and Kamandi are born.
And a tiny caption tells us we have reached
The end.
Gosh, well then.
That was exciting.
It was. Now, just for purposes that, and according to Mike's, this is for Kamandi takes place between issues 31 and 32, and the same month that this B&B was published, issue 31 was on the stands. Peter and I do have a plan to do Kamandi issue 29, listeners, don't you worry, we haven't forgotten. It is coming. I loved that. That was great. Very fresh, very different to a lot of other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I like Kamandi as a character, as a concept.
Yes.
I love the fact that Batman's way of going to the future was just basically John Carter. Splitting in two and being transported
Yes.
and leaving his one body behind and having another body go to the new place.
It's very much like the Professor Nichols time travel stories, and that, you know, that Batman and Robin are hypnotised into being in another era.
Yeah.
Except it's a magic powder this time.
Yeah, it's interesting.
So, yeah.
I mean, if I'd had the time to do my full Kamandi read,
Mm-hmm.
I might be able to offer some more comment. Maybe the time we get to when we do issue 29, I might have some more to say. That was a really interesting aspect of it, because they've obviously sort of thought, right, you know, let's promote Kamandi by having Batman meet him. How are we going to do that?
Yeah.
And it's like, let's have the simplest, easiest, it's some magic powder.
Yep, of course it is.
I seem to remember that in the other one, 156, Kamandi, or whichever one it is, Kamandi comes back to the 20th century.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we'll decide to do that one near the time.
It's a nice slip for me.
We'll see what happens, because obviously we're planning on doing Kamandi issue 29, because it kind of ties into an issue of Superman that we're planning on doing, and we're going to do, and this is maybe a spoiler, but I've told a couple of people we're going to be doing this, we're going to do the Kamandi and Karate Kid crossover. When that happens, that's obviously a couple of years away at this point, because that ties the whole slightly contrary
alternate futures. Yes.
contrary futures up against each other, and obviously all those futures were affected by the crisis, so that's something else. I mean, in many ways, it was another Bob Haney Brave and the Bold with Batman running around the desert with a guest superhero.
At least there was Gotham skyscrapers in the last panel.
Yeah,
You know,
which
that's
we've had quite a lot of.
Uh-huh.
I love that whole Planet of the Apes conceit, you know, that Kamandi rips off, basically.
Mm-hmm.
That was really, really interesting. Really different to any of the situations that you normally find Batman in, you know.
Yeah. Quite a few things to talk about in this one. Shall we talk about the big thing first?
Yes.
So, in this future Kamandi world, there's a pristine copy of Brave and Bold 118 that they use to summon Batman. Now, does that mean that Kamandi takes place in an alternate Earth where DC Comics were published and they could read that issue?
Yes. Does it suggest that Kamandi takes place on Earth Prime, for example?
Mm-hmm. or some other Earth.
Uh-huh.
But also bear in mind that comics were published on Earth 1 of Golden Age characters,
Yes.
so who's to say that they didn't publish comics about the current heroes?
This is true. I mean, we all know that from the Marvel comics, that there were comics published, and it's an interesting one that the whole comics being published on Earth 1 featuring Earth 2 characters, because did they publish Superman comics where Clark Kent was secret identity? I don't know, but that's a conversation for another time.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's over fair. I mean, that whole panel, which actually is very similar, I think it's issue 4 of Kamandi where he holds up the cover of an issue of The Demon. So there's a precedent for this sort of taking place in Kamandi stories. That presence of that cover with Wildcat would have been justification for us doing this, I think, on its own, because it's a Golden Age DC superhero appearing in a story from the Bronze Age of comics, technically. It's interesting to think about because it sort of suggests that Batman being summoned to the future, is he being summoned to the future from a parallel Earth? Is that part of it? I don't think so in this case. I think it might just be your suggestion that whichever Earth this is taking place on, there are comics published on that Earth. I think that's probably the safest one, but it's nice to imagine that he's maybe Kamandi is the future of Earth Prime.
Oh, yeah, it's lovely to imagine. We have a great disaster.
Well, we'll be dead by then, so it won't matter. Because obviously Kamandi does feature in Crisis on Infinite Earths. We'll have to, when we get there, we'll see which Earth they have him set on when he's, set in the future. It's another one of these brave and bold questions which is difficult to answer, isn't it?
Certainly is. The other way to look at it would be if Manton actually knew that Batman was a comic character. And this magic powder wasn't so much time travel as it was bringing forth a fictional character from the past.
Whoa!
So that could be a manifestation of fiction.
Well, yeah, but it does seem like it's definitely our contemporary Earth, Brave and the Bold Bruce Wayne that's been transported, isn't it?
But that's that version from that comic.
Explain.
Everything that we've seen this Batman do in this issue is the exact same thing that the Batman of Brave and Bold 118 would be doing.
Right.
So is Manton saying this is the hero that we need? So they try and bring forth and summon that hero.
So when we see Commissioner Gordon and that hospital doctor, we're dipping into the fiction that Manto is pulling from.
Yes.
Wow.
There we go.
That's deep.
There you go. Well,
blimey. No, I'm not. I don't dispute it. I can't
It's
wait.
a possibility. We can't rule it out.
It's an option. I mean, I cannot wait to see what the letters page for this has to say, as far as all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I don't have an answer to that. I mean, to me, it just seems the simplest way is if we accept that this is the contemporary Batman and it's the guy on Earth 1, that there are comics published at some point.
Yeah.
Or maybe a traveller from Earth Prime to Kamandi's Earth left that issue. Maybe one of us or one of our listeners left his copy of B&B 118 behind. Kamandi also, I think, references books that his grandfather owned.
Yes, that's
which
correct.
have superheroes in them.
Yeah.
Which again, when we come to issue 29 Kamandi, there might be some more on that sort of stuff.
Hmm.
That's another thing to think of as well, that this does seem to be a future on an Earth where Batman existed. I mean, the comic is the one that really kind of mixes it up. Mean, it's fascinating to think, like, do you remember what's commonly known as the sort of 3-book Legion of Superheroes, the one that Mark Waid and Barry Kitson worked on?
Yeah.
They would quite often show off the covers of comics from that time. Okay.
It's been a long time since I read it. I only read bits of it as well.
Yeah, and I remember sort of being at some of that and sort of suggesting, what's going on here then?
Yeah.
It's one that does raise a lot of questions. There are no easy answers to it, and I think we should move on.
Fair enough. The horse was very fun. I enjoyed the horse turning up when he was needed at the very end.
Yes, if this was an episode of the Power of Three, we could probably play it. I would encourage Kenny to play it with Chestnut Mare by the Birds. Let's talk about the fact that the lead gorilla was called Gorgo.
Gorgo, yes.
A reference to the movie with Bill Travers and that little boy from that other movie. Gorgo, which I first saw at the age of 3, I think. Thanks to BBC Genome, I was able to track it down exactly as to when it was I'd seen it. Great movie.
And of course, Steve Ditko did the comic.
Yeah. Published, but was it Charlton? Was it? I think.
Can't remember.
I've got a couple of issues of it somewhere, but they're probably not to hand under all these other piles of comics that litter my house.
I've got the hardback collection of it somewhere as
nice.
well. Yeah.
I think I've got one too. I can see it right in front of me. There we go, just down there. You see?
There we go.
Ditko Monsters Gorgo. There we are, right.
Yes, that's exactly what I've got.
That's a nice little metatextual sort of...
It is.
I feel sure that's deliberate on Haney's part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
The radiation band thing was very interesting, and actually looking at the cover now, we can actually see that it's there, but it's just sort of grey.
Oh, of course,
see?
yeah.
See, they're like not only the gorillas the wrong colour in their arm and their gear, but the radiation band isn't too clear either. We'll have to see how clear it is in the foreign reprints when I pop them on the socials in a few days, listeners, won't we?
It's weird how it's just one belt of radiation around the mountain. Kind of strange that it's like this glowing energy You know, it's
Yeah.
bizarre.
The whole future world of Kamandi is bizarre. It's fascinating. Just there's tons of it, but it's interesting. And Batman obviously recognises it for what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Does Kamandi suffer from running through it though, or is he immune? That was something I felt was kind of not answered.
I think the people that survived are immune, and that's why
Right.
Batman went over it.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I think they're okay.
That's fair. I get you.
Because, you know, Kamandi does say, perhaps I'm immune to its power. Descendants of survivors are like that.
Of course.
So that would
So he
kind of
does.
make sense.
Yeah.
That's in the same panel where the big reveal of the cassette player is.
Yes.
Which looks very much like the one I had hooked up to my ZX Spectrum back in the 80s.
It looks very much like the one that we used to record our podcast.
Yes, back in the 80s.
Gosh.
That was hilarious as well, because how good are the batteries in that thing?
I know. That hadn't occurred. That's interesting. I mean, what if maybe, I don't know, was still some main socket thing plugged in? I don't know. But even there, the fact that the speakers and the electronic equipment still works
I was
after.
going to say the same thing. There must be some power
Logopolis.
supply, you know?
However, you know, far in the future we actually are at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Again, lots of questions.
Unless it's some very basic.
Conical thing, like just having
Sure.
your hand over your mouth like this.
Yeah, could be.
And yeah, could be.
I like that use of Mount Rushmore in the story.
Yeah.
That was
Mhm.
it's another way of, you know, riffing on the whole landmarks that will still be
Yes.
around in the future
Yep.
sort of thing.
And of course, this isn't the only time Mount Rushmore is used as a base of operations, because it's also used in Young Justice.
Yeah, well, that's one of the covers
So-
that I
yep.
posted probably during Press Week, if that's when it was that I
Mm.
did it, because we haven't checked yet. I think Tim or Corner or Bart has the line, "It's gonna blow!" as they jump out of someone's nose and it's full of
Yes.
explosives.
Tee hee hee.
Very amusing.
Amusing.
Very
Yes.
amusing. Jinx.
It was great to see Batman just casually unmask in front of people.
Yes.
Just to say, look, I'm human. But obviously
Yes.
it's not, it's Bruce Wayne, because
Of course,
they
because
wouldn't
that's-
know unless they'd obviously read the comic.
Yeah, that's obviously not going to be an issue. That's very true. Wow.
And then pretty much instantly puts it back on. But
Uh-huh.
it was good, yeah.
Yeah, it might have been interesting if he'd left the mask off
Mhm.
for the duration of the story. That would have been quite,
Yeah.
you know, only pulling it back on at the end when he departs.
Yep.
That's an interesting one.
Speaking of leaving the mask on, obviously comatose Batman is in this hospital bed,
Yes.
still in full costume.
Yes.
Obviously still with mask on, but that's you expect that, you know,
Yes.
to preserve identity. But in full costume for 3 days,
I know.
that's sort of
Was
bit yucky.
would Commissioner Gordon not have been even remotely curious to have a little peek?
Gordon
underneath the cowl?
knows. Gordon knows, but he just doesn't want anyone else to know.
Yeah.
I'm thoroughly of the opinion that Gordon knows. There's a great issue during No Man's Land
Okay.
where Batman's desperately trying to get Gordon to do a certain thing and
Right.
use his influence, but everything's wrecked, and it's all just a case of he's grasping to try and do everything he can.
Uh-huh.
And he's basically says, "Jim, it's come to this. I trust you. I trust you implicitly. In fact," and he goes to unmask, and Gordon turns around and says, "Nope, I do not want to know. I don't want to see your face. Okay, I might know, I might not know. So,
Right.
but I do not want it confirmed. You don't need to prove that to me. As far as I'm concerned, you are Batman." Right.
Wow.
It's like that. It's like, no. Because
Sure.
Bruce is there, cowl off, going,
Mm.
"But Jim," he's like, "No, I'm not interested. No, we're not doing this conversation now. This is not happening."
Wow.
It's...
I hope there wasn't any CCTV.
Well, it's during No Man's Land. There's pretty much nothing.
Right. I've not read Batman regularly in decades.
It's great. I've got a page from No Man's Land.
I certainly didn't read No Man's Land.
No, it's good.
Cool. When would that have been?
Oh,
Do you remember?
gosh.
Late 90s, early 2000s, what? I
Yeah,
don't
around
know.
about then, yeah.
I haven't read Bats. Probably haven't read Bats regularly since Nightfall, let's be honest.
That's way
Anyway,
after that. But
interesting.
yes, so it's a really good issue. A really
Okay.
good issue. But I'm always of the firm belief that, you know, Gordon knows.
The commission knows. No, it's fair.
Mhm.
It's probably, I mean, it's reasonable.
Mhm.
And he's obviously got enough integrity that he's not going to give it away. Interesting.
I like the whole thing of the gods getting them to drag the plane, because that basically uses up all the resources and is pointless.
Yes.
Bring me that plane.
It's a great image as well.
Yeah, uh-huh.
We're kind of spoiled for choice for panels for the socials this
Yeah,
week. It's going to be
definitely.
difficult to narrow this down.
Hmm.
Instagram lets you post more than 10 images now, but I still just try to keep it within that limit. Just
Keep it reasonable.
yeah, exactly. We don't want to
Mm,
post the entire story. So
No,
I
no,
think
no,
with this
can't
one,
do that.
rather than sometimes I try and get the gist of the story. This one, I think I might just go for strong images, but we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
Anything else we want to talk about?
I think there was more lasso action in this than there was in any of the vigilante stories that we've done.
Lots of rope fun. Well, see, that kind of adds to that sort of frontier, sort of western, sort of survival sort of feel, I think, in a way, doesn't it?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I was glad that they used the image of Batman being dragged
Yeah.
I mean, he's been dragged by the ankles in the cover. I don't think it's not by the ankles
No,
inside,
it's the other
but
way around.
it's good that it wasn't Defenders 39-esque. You know, it didn't lie to us about what was going on inside.
Or where it was happening, yes.
Yeah.
That's all makes sense.
And because I liked how it just all stayed in and around Mount Rushmore. I mean, it's the statue's been on the cover and stuff. It's
I wonder if there is a railway near there. Listeners, do you know, is there a railway at Mount Rushmore?
Yes, someo's going to know.
And is there a loose caboose
Loose caboose about this house. Yes.
Yes.
Let's say there. Right, we're rambling maybe a bit now. Should we jump to the contemporary correspondence?
Let's do so. Let's jump forward to Brave and Bold, issue 123.
As usual, the Brave and the Bold letters page gives you sort of snippets as well as a couple of short letters. So we're just going to work our way through it.
When it was decided to pair Kamandi, the last boy on Earth, with our favourite detective, the Batman, we expected great quantities of mail. But never in our wildest expectations did we foresee the avalanche that filled the B&B mailbag for 120's This Earth is Mine. The initial announcement of the story was met with cries of, "It can't be done!" that echoed throughout fandom. But now the vast majority of mail peals praise. To wit,
I really didn't think such an offbeat team-up could be done, admits J. L. Ziebler of Oberlin, Ohio. But between Bob Haney and Jim Aparo, something clicked. So weird, so bizarre, so unlikely, and so well done.
Brooklyn, New York's Joe Paluzzo calls it the best story of 1975, while J. Douglas Wellington, Philadelphia, PA, who's read 'em all, claims it to be the best B&B he's ever read.
Captain Bat, Intelligent Bears, Mount Rushmore Gods. Haney has added some intriguing aspects to the Kirby mythos that I, for one, hope to see in Kamandi's own mag, writes Randy Ralph. Gosh, how Randy? Fort Gordon, GA. Where's GA?
Georgia.
Oh, I suppose. Okay, cool. Only Haney and Aparo could have matched the Kirby greatness.
With all these rave remarks, it seems clear that William Nutt, Dover, New Jersey, who claimed we made a mockery of Kamandi, Sherman Boyson, Amherst, M.E., where's M.E.? Don't know that one, who was sickened by the whole thing, and David A. Jones, Horse Cave, Kentucky, who said the story was silly, will have to stand in a little group all by themselves.
We get a letter then that reads, Dear Editor, I didn't think you could do it, but you did. Teaming up Batman with Kamandi sounded like an impossible job, but it came off well. I will ignore the implausible time travel device and simply say that I liked the story idea. And that's from Steve Andrews, Richfield, Minnesota.
Editorial response says, You are not alone in questioning the time travel device that drew Batman into the fantastic future world of Kamandi. Don Dembrock, Fresno, California, complained that the Indian magic was a rather unlikely explanation, but New York City's Tom Ward worded his wonderment. Tom said, I was wondering how Bob would handle the time factor between Batman and Kamandi. Would it be a time machine or a secret dimension? It was neither. The magic was the answer, and it was a pleasant surprise. Very believable, especially for the mysterious Batman. And the editorial continues, we could go one step further back into time and remind you oldsters out there that Batman first broke the time barrier, Batman 24, August-September 1944, with the help of a hypnotic spell placed upon him by Professor Nichols. Like the Indian magic, this spell sent Batman off through time, while his real body remained in the present. It was much later when Professor Nichols finally used a more conventional time machine. All Bob Haney was trying to do was recap Batman's original time-travelling methods.
Who's JCH, do you think?
Jack C. Harris.
Right, there we are. That's who's handling this letters page. And that seems to be it, apart from the little final paragraph which talks about who we're covering in issue 124, which is also an issue that we'll be planning. So, we might end up doing another Batman and Kamandi. We shall see how we feel near the time. But as I say, we have a plan to do Kamandi issue 29. We've just about missed where it was published originally, but we're going to fit it in beside an issue of Superman that we're going to be doing, which won't be too far away as the crow flies.
It will make sense when you get to it.
Very much so.
Yes, absolutely. And if you want to get in touch with us and tell us what you think of this issue, you can email us at theearth2podcast@gmail.com. Make sure you follow us on social media because we'll be putting up some lovely bonus content for this and indeed every episode. On Facebook and Instagram, we're at the Earth2 Podcast, and at Twitter, we're at podcast_Earth2, and it is the number 2 for all of our socials.
It certainly is, yes. As I always say at this point in the show, if you're enjoying what we're doing, tell your pals, spread the word. You could leave us a review wherever it is you find your podcast. You could visit our Linktree and find a link to our coffee page to buy Peter the price of a beverage to keep him awake and to keep Cafe Nero on Sauchiehall Street afloat. I want to give a quick shout out to Alex Finney, one of our listeners, who I've been chatting to lightly on Instagram recently. Alex, I really appreciate your support. He's been mentioning us in some of the posts when he shares comics from his own collection, some of his acquisitions. The other day there was an issue of Brave and Bold that he'd bought, which was one that we covered, and he mentioned us very kindly. At the same time, I want to thank everyone who shared our recent Seven Soldiers of Victory episodes. Very kind of you to do so. We had a lot of fun putting them together and a lot of fun listening to them. So there.
Yes, absolutely.
And will the Seven Soldiers ever return? Will Kamandi return? Who can say? The only way to find out for sure is to keep listening.
On that bombshell, I've been Peter.
And I've been David. Take care, folks. We'll see you soon on
The Earth 2 Podcast.
Transmatter cube activated. Return coordinates set for Earth Prime.
Kamandi is thinking, that book grandfather had... Sorry, again. That book grandfather... I can't say grandfather today.
Grandfather.
Today's the difficult word.
Yes, my child.
25 minutes of grandfather outtakes to look forward to, listeners.
Shortly after mastering the Mustang, Kamandi...
Gosh.
Did you think for that, Kamandi?
Really disappointing that Logan wasn't here to do this one. He would have liked that. Anyway.
It is dawn, and with a great groaning and creaking, David and Peter go to their stand to their feet.
Let's try that now.
No, we want to finish this.
Oops, a daisy.
Okay.
Oh, there we go. My knees are a bit stiff because I had to carry lots of boxes of comics upstairs for ages yesterday.
And
But
you
there
did a
go.
great job, sir.
Thanks, matey. Always a pleasure.
Never a chore.